Okay, guys, we are back for episode 3 in our 4-part series. And I think Mr. Louis Q is getting comfortable now.
I'm getting there. I think, this episode is going to help me ease into it a bit more.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
By that time, episodes will be done.
Yeah.
We would have finished recording. So far, we have given a bit of a deep dive into why and how we planned the wedding in under 6 months, what that experience was like. We also talked about how we met and some of the things around dating, even off camera. I think there is so much more we could have talked about, but we're also trying to keep each episode bite size. And maybe as well, I do want to put it out there, if you have questions, drop them in the comments below.
100%.
Well, especially if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, you're probably thinking, what? Where do I do that? But on YouTube, drop your comments below because I'm sure there's so many things we've not touched on. And our lovely Laurie said, what about finances? How do you guys discuss that? So maybe we save that for a future episode. Okay, so seeing as we've looked at how we were focused on finding love, let's talk about keeping love. And I've basically taken the words, by the way, from Paul Brunson, because his book, which we went to his book launch earlier this year, is called Finding Love. And because there's so much emphasis on how to date, what we're looking for, red flags, all of that, one thing I actually don't think we talk enough about is how do you keep love? And Paul actually said on stage, I don't know if you remember this, you did actually actively take loads of notes, but he said, everybody asks me how long I've been married, and I say 22 years, and everybody responds, wow. But nobody asks, is it a healthy 22 years? And that I thought was gold. So today, we're taking a look at our relationship, things I think that we've learned along the way, and our non-negotiables within our relationship. And I don't want this to be an episode about what we do works for us, therefore you should do it too. But are there things that resonate as you're listening to us talk that maybe you want to try in your relationship or a future relationship? Or maybe are there things that you absolutely disagree with because you're like, that would never work in my relationship, but that gives you enough clarity for you to know what you don't want. So lots of takeaways, I'm hoping, for everybody listening. Louis Q's nodding. He's nodding. I don't know if he's ever recorded or had to speak this much, but you're doing a good job.
Oh, thank you.
All right. It is only fair. We've talked about this on social media. We need to take it to the podcast. Let's talk about our communication styles. What's your communication style?
I've got no idea.
Remember we did the quiz together?
No, that's love languages.
No, they're animals. Babe, we've done this.
Got you. Okay, I'm with you.
This also was only a couple of months ago.
Apologies, I'm new to all of this. So communication style is some sort of animal. I honestly can't remember.
Oh, you can't remember?
Eagle.
I'm an eagle, yeah.
Owl. I'm an owl. I remember now. I got there.
Okay,
owls take a time to get to things, so that was a typical owl.
Yes,
approach.
That's definitely one trait of an owl. Yeah. All right, I feel like let's rewind it. What are communication styles?
The way you communicate.
Yeah, like your own individual personal preference. Yes. Do you know how many there are?
4.
Yes. Okay, so we've got an owl and an eagle. Do you know the other 2?
Snake.
You're going to confuse everyone listening. I think this was the most rogue way I introduced this topic.
Oh, no. Owl, eagle.
Yeah. They're both birds. That's your clue. They're all birds.
Penguin.
Okay, no.
Help me out.
You've got an eagle, an owl, a dove.
Dove.
And a peacock.
Peacock. I was going to say that. Yeah.
Okay, so the point is that there are 4 communication styles. You're an owl. I'm an eagle. We'll get into that in a second. You can also be a blend of styles. If you're completely new, you're listening and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Literally, I will leave the link to the quiz in the show notes. But also, if you are looking on Instagram, it's the first post you will see on the page. So you can go and take the quiz and essentially find out what animal you actually communicate as. And the idea behind it is that this is our preference of how we like to talk, the way we want to get information over, and also the way we want people to talk to us. And the whole point of understanding that, which we're going to talk about in our relationship, is then where do you need to adapt and how hard is it? Like, is it easy? Is it not? Okay, so I'm an eagle, you're an owl. You said one thing about an owl in terms of Sometimes you need a bit more time before you communicate an idea.
Yes.
Anything else you remember about an owl?
The thinkers, they like deep thinkers.
Yeah, so I really tried to not put personality traits on the
Okay.
styles,
Yeah.
but you're right in the sense of need some more reflection time before they're actually maybe going to express how they're feeling or express an idea. And sometimes I think that can get misconstrued as that person's disinterested, where actually that's their reflection time they need to process how they feel or ideas. Does that resonate with you?
That does resonate with me.
And there's pros and cons for each one.
Yeah.
So what could be like the downside of an owl?
Downside of an owl is if they're paired with someone that needs the info straight away, they're not necessarily going to be able to give that to them. And there could be pressure to speak before they're ready to.
Yeah, and pressure's not helpful for owls when they're communicating at all. Okay, so very quick download on an eagle, in case anybody doesn't know it or hasn't heard me talk about this before. My dominant communication style is an eagle, so I'm pretty direct, to the point, and I am usually focused on the solution or the way that we move forward. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
Being on the receiving end of my style?
I can agree.
And so sometimes the downside of this style is you can be so focused on results. And I think actually this is a really good example of how we've navigated this week, which has been quite a busy week for us. I stay quite focused on getting things done. But then there are times where I think you can find that frustrating. But I'll let you talk about that in a second. So the point of this is also understanding that we have different styles. How do you think that works for us?
I think sometimes it doesn't work.
Okay.
But
get us with the controversial side first.
But that is where the kind of work and the challenge is. And if we always kind of communicated in a style that was suitable to us, I just don't think there would be any kind of growth, understanding, development with that. And sometimes I also don't think it would work, because if you had two owls together, they just would be sat in a room not talking to each other. Do you know what I mean? So there's that option as well. Or you got a relationship where things are actually annoying you, resentment is building up, and it's not getting spoken about.
You took one of the questions out of my mouth, because I was going to ask you, given the relationship that you're in with me and the fact our styles are different, do you think that they should be the same?
No. Not being in the relationship together and knowing how we work in tandem.
Yeah.
I would not like our communication styles to be the same.
Well, good to hear. And obviously too late now, because we'd have to just deal with it. But I remember when we were dating, I was very, very aware of you being quite a reflective thinker. And I know if anybody hasn't listened to the previous episode before this, when you do, this will make sense. But I teased you in terms of not messaging me after the first date. And I was like, what is that? And this is what it comes down to in terms of that communication preference and your style. Having said that, one of the things that I was really drawn to when we were dating was this reflective side of you. And because there wasn't a rush, which as an eagle, because I'm so focused on like a solution or the goal, I can rush myself, right? Which, apologies to everybody else around me. And you essentially dialed that down and gave me space to feel a bit more grounded. And I used to really admire the way you were. Really thoughtful in the way that you communicated, very well thought through. Everything you used to say when we were dating, I'd be like, I want to listen more, which makes me sound like I don't have that trait, but it's definitely your dominant way.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do that on the flip side as well. I remember when we were dating, it was the one thing I was really worried about. I don't think I've ever voiced this to you, have I? I was really worried because sometimes I can also view it as, oh, you're just being slow. And I was like, I move so quickly, I don't know if that's ever going to gel.
If it's going to work out.
Like, ooh. Well, we're 5 years in, so something must be working about it. When you said as well, navigating it in tandem as well, we do have different styles. There's strengths and weaknesses to both. How do you think we navigate it well? the fact that we've got different styles, different approaches?
I think having a space where you're open to adapting how you communicate. But that's difficult. And the only way I've managed to be able to do that is know what my triggers are, or know that, right, I'm actually going quite internal right now. And for this situation, specific to us, communicating with an eagle, that's not going to be helpful. So it's almost like adapting your style just to kind of get to a point where you may be able to say, oh, you know what? I get he's vocalized that to me, and that's all I needed. And then that will allow you to revert to saying, all right, I'm not going to keep talking at him. I'm going to let him have a bit of time. So then in turn, I'm getting what I needed by adapting.
Oh, okay. I get challenged all the time on why should I adapt? Like, why should the other person not have to adapt? And the goal is that we all get to a space where we're able to adapt. But look at the way you were able to position that and understand it in your brain. So you're like, okay, by me adapting, Amira hopefully is going to be
I'm not adapting forever. I'm adapting within that moment.
Yes, right. And that's that balance between being authentic and you still being able to communicate as an owl.
Yeah.
But then knowing where you and I both have to adapt, because if you only stayed communicating as an owl and I only stayed communicating as an eagle, we'd have conflict galore. Like, I don't know why I said that word. That reminds me of a word my mum would say. But anyway, we'd be in conflict majority of the time. What are some of your triggers that you touched on?
I think when we're communicating.
Yeah. So if you think about
if we are not discussing a resolution, I find that frustrating, because what I don't like is the tennis match of I did, you did. That to me seems like it's got no resolve, or it's not heading towards anywhere. So that's when I pull away a lot more, because I think, well, what's the point of just bringing up loads of receipts of something I've done, months ago? Because we're trying to resolve a situation right now. That's a trigger for me.
Okay, and I feel that this will get into the space where we're going to talk about fight languages, because I guess 3 things I want us to focus on in this conversation is definitely our communication style or language. Let's touch on love languages. I do sometimes feel like we over talk about that. And then let's actually talk about our fight languages.
We can leave love languages out if you want.
Well, I think it's nice to know them, no?
Yeah.
And whether they're the same, and again, are we adapting or are we not? Okay, what's your 1 or 2 top love languages?
Quality time. And
something you do for me. I think you do this a lot.
Acts of service.
Yeah.
Yes. Although I do think as you grow, they can change.
So I always say this as well, like normally, especially with your communication style as well, you're going to have the one that's innate in you.
Yeah, okay. I like that way of putting it.
But naturally, the whole goal is that we do adapt, right? But if there's things that
learn to tap into others.
Yeah, that's a nice way of positioning it.
Yeah, I know.
Because it's the same thing in terms of how you communicate. I know that me communicating as an eagle isn't always going to work, depending on who I'm talking to or speaking with, or who I'm dating. So you're going to have to tap into other things, but also doing it in a way where you don't lose who you are. So I think that in a work environment, not when I'm coaching, but business perspective, communicating as an eagle works really well. So coming on to then love languages, I still have my innate ones. Mine actually I don't think have changed. Yours maybe have evolved. But then also where your love languages come from can either come from what you didn't get growing up, or it can be the thing that you did witness. Can kind of one of 2 sides. Do you remember my love languages?
Words of affirmation.
And the one that you say I always do.
Gifts. No.
That's how I show love.
Yeah.
It's not how I want to receive love.
I can't remember.
Physical touch.
Oh, yes. Because I was going to say that was one of mine, but you're right. You're correct.
Would you feel like yours has now evolved?
No, I think the one I might be evolving to is words of affirmation, because I know to do it for you
Because you're married to me,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So this man are changing. You're molding me.
I'm not trying to, though.
Yeah. Unintentional.
I think you're doing me a disservice this episode,
Yeah.
I've got to say. And I think I've had to be really conscious of how to show you love, because I think I do tell you a lot of things. Like, I always say, oh God, I love you so much, or thank you for this. And maybe less so now, but definitely in the beginning, I'm not sure you would receive it in the way that I really wanted to give it to you. And that's because I was giving you love in the way I want to receive it. And then I think there was a disconnect for you. However, I think from the beginning, you've always shown your love to me, or one of the ways, through acts of service. And I love it, but it's also taken me a while to acclimatize to it. And I think sometimes, this is a really good example. You do buy me flowers, which is, I always say, like one of my love languages. I love flowers. They really make me feel uplifted. I think they make the home like a really beautiful environment, and I'm all about your physical space. Why are you screwing up your face?
No, I'm just interested in what you're going to say. I got you flowers this week.
Yeah, you got me flowers this week. And my favourite flowers, which are?
Lilies.
Yeah, white lilies. You know, white lilies represent death. Did you know that? Yeah, but I love them. So let's just ignore that. And the first thing, so I walked in and you'd already cut them and put them in the vase. And you said, but I'd only just walked through the door. You're like, did you not even notice I got you flowers? And I felt like, one, I needed to walk through the door first. And two, I'm always so insanely grateful. But do you feel like sometimes I'm not? He's like, this is being recorded forever. What do I say?
It's what we're discussing. And sometimes one person's way of giving and receiving love is different. And I think I forget that you actually are grateful.
How else do you think I could show that to you?
I'd have to think about it.
Okay, fine. To be fair, I thought
you're not going to get me saying it now.
So you're going to be a typical owl and go and reflect on it?
Yes, thank you very much. Shout out all my owls.
Okay, fine. Okay, I was going to
That was so eagle of you. You're just out there. Yeah, go on.
What, in terms of the way that I question you?
Yeah. It's like you set up this whole podcast just to get the answers.
No, you actually don't know the questions I'm going to ask you.
No, I don't. I don't.
And the whole point is so that it feels natural for you. But you're definitely going rogue today.
Thank you.
What frustrates or annoys you about the way that I communicate sometimes? Being let's say a typical owl. Oh, sorry, typical eagle.
So for me, when something is said multiple times, it loses value. That's for me. That's how I feel. The more someone says I'm sorry, like say that someone has said sorry to me multiple times in the week, I just start to think. But this is I'm just being completely transparent on. I just start to think, well, you're saying it so much. Also, this is coming from how I grew up and my experiences. So I think the trouble I have with an eagle is if a lot is being said, it's like what's actually going in, and I'm taking in. And I do listen. I'm a good listener. I don't want.
You are, by the way. You are an incredible listener.
I just think if something is being oversaid, and sometimes I'm like, what's the point that you're making? Because sometimes I feel as though there can be a lot of, fluff around to validate the main point. But you don't need to do that with me. If you say to me, this is what it is and this is how I feel, it's got all the validation. I'm going to literally believe you. I'm not thinking, oh, you need to, prove your case a bit more. You asked for it.
The whole time you were talking, I was looking at Laurie's face. I was like, okay, we put it on the table. All right, it feels then that it's really relevant in the terms of what we're talking about, that we have to talk about our fight languages and you understanding your triggers and me understanding mine. And I think this is the biggest thing. So we've touched on communication language, love languages. Fight language is something we don't talk about enough. And if you've heard of your stress responses, which is your fight, your flight, your freeze, your fawn, or your flop, your fight language essentially comes from that. So I think it was important what you said in terms of triggers, and then you understanding what yours are and where they've come from in terms of how you've grown up, and then explaining essentially, tell me if I've misheard this, but what I heard right now was that sometimes I over communicate with you, or it can feel like a bombardment of information, so it then loses meaning or you don't take it on.
Yeah, it
loses value. Wow, talk about, you're on fire today. And I know you may disagree with this, okay, but I know what my fight language has been, because it's always been my fight language, but in lots of different contexts, not just relationships, which is to validate or prove. It's essentially to fight. That is mine. Let's just put that on the table. But I do stand by the fact that I've worked so bloody hard. I'd probably say over a 10-year period, if I'm really honest, like before I met you, to really understand it and diffuse it. I would say it's taken the best shape in the last couple of years. But that's where I was like, you might disagree, but I'm going to back myself on this.
You've done a lot of work even since we got together, I've noticed.
So if my fight language in these moments where, let's say, we're miscommunicating, is to get defensive, to maybe over communicate, to try and prove what I'm trying to say. I also want to talk about that in the past tense because I have really adapted. What would you say your fight language is? When there's that miscommunication or that friction, what do you tend to do?
I like come away. What's that one called?
It can be like your flight, because you withdraw from the situation.
Yeah. It's like I need my own space to get my thoughts together. It's not that I want to not talk about it. I actually do, but I want to get a better understanding of how I feel, because everything you're saying is like, because it's almost, I'm really heightened to like taking information in. The more information you give me, it's like I can't create a clear, it's like even just seeping through still. So I need to separate myself so I can get clear on my thoughts.
Yeah.
And then I can come and sit at the table and discuss.
Yeah.
But like arguing, going that, like I said before, the tennis, like going back and forth, I find it very difficult.
Yeah, whereas
it's very more draining for me.
Yeah, and I think I've had to really, really learn the impact that has on you.
Yeah.
Because where you describe it as a tennis match, it's me trying to get to the bottom of something.
Fine.
And I would be
I
like,
can see that.
But we could just talk about it and resolve it now. Whereas for you, that's literally like, hey, I'm calling time out.
Yeah.
Let me literally go and regulate myself. If you don't know regulate, I just mean understanding your emotions and what you're feeling and processing it so that you can then come and have a healthy conversation.
I want to make a point as well, because I think that's why my health and fitness is so important to me, and sleep.
Go on, I was on a call about this today.
Most of the time these kind of conversations are happening is when those things are lacking, sleep deprived, or there's like a time restraint for things.
Yeah.
So I think I want to show up in our marriage, in work and with other friendships as best as possible. But I know for me particular, because I don't have much capacity to do the back and forth, I need to make sure like there's nothing else hindering me, i.e. my sleep, my energy levels.
I think that's so incredibly important, because yes, they are, when those factors are missing or one of them.
It's like even harder.
Yeah, which is also different for each of us. Like we've all got different tolerance levels. I think you and I would both agree. I don't know why I'm looking at you for confirmation, but I think we would both agree that when I say you need more sleep than me, I mean that if I'm getting less sleep, I will still be able to tolerate that space a little bit more. Obviously, our jobs are different as well. So like your job is so much more physical than mine. And so I also think that requires something different from you. But I know that I could get away with a couple of nights where I'm not got my optimum sleep. And I think for the most part, I can still function. I'm not saying it won't catch up with me, it will. Whereas for you, I feel like if you're affected by
tolerance is different.
Yeah. One night of bad sleep, woof, those stats on the Whoop, it's like meltdown. Oh my God, why is the HRV higher than mine? So I really do think that it's okay to have conflict. When I say conflict as well, I think everyone thinks about it in such a negative way. But I always...
conflict is good.
Yeah, and it's about actually how do you have it and how do you manage it in a healthy way. One of my clients said to me this week, actually, my partner's been annoying me. This was over like a considerable amount of time. And they said, I'm just done. Like, I'm so fed up of them. They annoy me. They got to the point where why am I even in this? But actually, with a bit of reflection and working through it, and also look at their fight response, right? Is to avoid, is to like cut off and be like, I'm done. Like I exit. And actually what they realise is over a considerable amount of time, they hadn't actually communicated to their partner the things that were bothering them. And what happened is all of those feelings built up, snowballed.
Compounded.
Yeah, compounded. And since then, they've had these conversations. I think for their partner as well, they didn't realise these were the things.
Yeah, they're never going to know unless you vocalise it.
Yeah, and I also say as well that it's what's in our self-awareness sphere. We've always got blind spots. Okay, when it comes to the way that we sometimes get into our miscommunications and knowing, you know, I do think we both have quite a high level of awareness. And given that we've worked on it a lot, what do you think we could still do better?
I think we could still improve on realizing when we're being triggered and saying, right, this what's happening right now is just us getting triggered by our different styles of communicating.
Yeah.
So what can we do now in this moment to maybe put this on pause and just step back, give it a different perspective, maybe discuss it in the next 5 minutes, or we can shelve it and discuss it at another time, because right now we're only going to be heading to more of a conflict. That's not easy to remember to do.
Yeah.
And to do when there's lack of sleep, you need to be out the door in 20 minutes. So I honestly think it always bottles down to that, having the time and space to be able to say, right, let's look at it as though, right, we need to kind of take a step back. And I think that's probably the most difficult thing to do. It's like trying to fit in your meals in a day, or say trying to eat the right food in the week. It's like, yeah, we know this is the food I should be eating, but it's like having the time and energy to do it. That's what it boils down to.
It reminds me, as you said that as well, do you remember we talked about this tool that Brené Brown shared that she does with her husband, and they do this check-in where they'll both put on the table the level of the percentage they're at?
Yeah, that's so helpful.
And I don't think you and I have done this for a while, but definitely in the early days, we used to be so committed to that practice. And it'd be like, okay, what's your percentage level today? And it doesn't mean with each other. It means just as a human being, taking into consideration your nutrition, your sleep, maybe your stress levels at work.
Yeah.
What percentage are you at?
And that allows you to almost acknowledge yourself, because you don't know, you could just be getting through the day and then you're just showing up in a certain way. But if you take a moment to say, actually, I think I'm running at about 40%, then almost that realization is like, wow, of course I'm going to be snappy. Of course. No wonder I'm speaking to my partner this way.
Yeah.
And in that kind of like moment, even that can just resolve the conflict.
And also then it puts on the table as well, where's the other person at? Because if one of us has got a higher percentage, then you hope they've got more capacity to hold that space.
And maybe that person could do remember previously we spoke about just the slight altering of their style.
Yeah.
Then the person with more percentage could do that.
Yeah, definitely. And then the harder conversation, I think, comes when you're both running at like 20%.
Yeah, that's difficult.
Question.
Yeah.
What percentage would you say you're running at today?
What, today?
Yeah.
I'm maybe at... I don't drink like coffee or anything,
No,
and I've not consumed any caffeine today this morning. I feel as though if I was to, maybe my percentage could go up a little bit. But to be honest, I'm probably at like a 70, 65. Like I'm not like...
Wait. I'm sorry.
What do you mean?
You're at a 65%.
Yeah, but 50 is like half. That's like...
Okay.
Not here. That's like me going, but... 50 I'm off.
Well, I would have put myself at 40% today.
Oh, okay. I'm close to you then. But we're measuring it different.
No, I know.
I've got work
Okay.
later.
How's that affecting your percentage now?
It's making me like keep some back because I need to give it. I'll show up for work 100%.
Guys, if you're listening to this and you feel like Louis Q hasn't brought enough to the table, I can only apologise. I'm teasing you. I'm so teasing. The other thing I remember as well, you know, when you said as well, it's really difficult in the moment when you feel that you're in your fight language. So mine's like, keep fighting, and then
I've got a good tool for that, by the way, but go on.
Well, I was going to share mine, but please go ahead.
All right. No, you go first.
No, I would love to hear yours.
You want me to share my tool first?
Yeah.
But mine's going to be the gold one.
Or then that means we don't need mine.
Oh, I'm going to share mine. So
okay.
What was it you just said?
So you shared earlier that it's really difficult when you're both triggered, you're both in the moment. Yes, we know we need to eat well that week, or we know that actually communicating in that moment is not helpful. But how do you stop it or break the cycle?
So it's something that I've learned in therapy and is quite rooted. What you need to start to understand is looking back at why your triggers are there and where they've developed from, which is usually how you grew up, how you were shown love, how you navigated relationships, you know, from an early age. So then once you realize like, oh, actually I'm someone that I've got quite, my ego is quite, I'm quite protective of it. Then you give that version of yourself a bit more of a character. So say, right, you give them an age, you know, what they look like, maybe what they're wearing. And you then know, okay, that's the ego Louis who, you know, doesn't like his ego getting touched or challenged. So in the moments where your ego's getting challenged, you literally in your head, it's like, wait a second, that ego Louis is in the driving seat right now. He's there. And what you need to do is say, mate, pull over, we're swapping seats. So there's like a visual in your mind where you go, I'm now visually. And if you're in a conversation with someone, you just say to them, I need a moment. Can we come back to this in like 3 or 4 minutes? You go away, you go through that visualization of like, that version of me was in control just then. They can come in and come out. Sometimes you need that version of you as well in certain situations.
It's not always bad.
It's not always bad.
Label it as bad and it's
No, it's not. But for that moment to navigate that specific conflict, they need to step out of the driver's seat, and you want to step in another version of you, maybe the adult version, a bit older, you know, the bit more calmer.
Yeah.
So then you get back in the seat, and then they're in control for that part of the journey, and you go back and you navigate the conflict.
Thank you, Mr.
I told you it's a gold.
Okay, my tool links to yours, but I would say mine's probably more of a quick bite-sized thing in the moment, which then links to what you're suggesting around that visualization, which, I mean, I'm a visual person. So that when you said, whoa, let's pull over the car, let's swap seats. I was like, yes. What I was going to say in the moment is literally call a timeout. So have either a code word or something that interrupts it, because what you want to do is zoom out of the situation and not look at it as you in it, but you have to break that automatic thought pattern in your brain, which you often can't do in the moment. So rather than trying to do it in the moment, give yourself space to do the activity that you've just suggested, but have some sort of really quick, helpful trigger. Like literally say, time out. If anyone's not watching this, I've literally got a tea with my hands. But have something that then can be that break point in that conversation or in when you're in your fight language. Okay, Mr. Louis Q, you are dropping wisdom upon wisdom. So thank you, even on your 65%. I appreciate you. I thought it would be a really beautiful way to round up this episode, actually talking a little bit around our non-negotiables within our relationship. If I asked you our top 3 non-negotiables for like helping us operate in a healthy way, have a healthy type of relationship, they don't need to match what I've got in my head, but what would you say they are?
I think time together that isn't discussing schedules, house stuff, and you know what we're doing on the weekend.
That's not like task oriented conversation,
it's just,
it's connection.
Yeah, that's
which also very sorry.
Like a date night.
Yeah, I was like, I'm really sorry I've interrupted you.
Yes, you did.
I apologise. What I wanted to insert while I have interrupted your thought process is to say, look at your love language coming back in.
Oh, the acts of quality time.
Yeah, quality time. Okay, so quality time is really important. Having conversation and connection that's not about our to-do list.
Non-negotiable.
Yeah. Or even things that are important to us.
Yeah, traveling, going away together, like literally coming out of the country if you're able to, or changing your environment.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, especially when you live with someone, it's like you eat in that space, you cry, you like have difficult conversations in that space. You laugh, you this. So sometimes it's all those emotions, everything is in that space. So coming away from it can sometimes be helpful to just have some new convos.
Anything else you want to add?
About that, changing the environment?
No.
No, those are the only two I've got.
Really similar to mine. I think as well you even mentioned date night, which I know can come under that quality time and that connection.
We can do things in a day.
Well, I was going to say something that I've really loved lately is when we do a spontaneous dinner in the week.
Yeah.
Like a Tuesday night in our Spanish restaurant that's literally down the road. I love it. Or we've actually got really good, is it Vietnamese?
No, it's Thai.
Is it Thai?
Yeah, I'm sure.
And it's like can only fit like 8 tables in it. You bring your own drink. Tuesday night dinner there. Also, we both eat for like under 30 quid. I'm sorry, but in 2024, where can you do that? Other than McDonald's. But I really love that because it like breaks up my work brain and remembers like, oh, we get to zoom out and connect. So I really love that. I think there's only one other thing I'd add. This has been your mantra from the beginning of our relationship. And you said, I'm always here for the hard conversations. And you used to say it to me in the middle of a hard conversation. Whenever, especially more in the early days, before we understood the way we communicate, the way we fight, the way we love, you would always say to me, these are the moments I'm here for. And surprisingly enough, in the beginning, it used to make me so uncomfortable, us having the hard conversations. And that was driven by a lot of fear on my side. But I would say that's something that's really helped us to create that space to address things that we might not align on. So hopefully that's given everybody enough to think about, reflect on, and have some pillars to think about. What is your communication style? So if you don't know it, go take the quiz. Understand your love language and know that the way you give it and the way you receive it tends to be different. And loads more to come on this, but think about your fight language. Because when you understand that, and we've got a gorgeous visualization, aka from Mr. Louis Q, then hopefully it gives you enough perspective to approach things differently.